I remember being a kid, digging around in the ground here and there, and even recently, and finding a buried plastic bottle or a plastic bag that looked like it had been there for thousands of years, right? Decomposing right before my eyes, it would seem. Or being a kid playing in the park, those plastic benches, playgrounds, seats, what have you, that the sun would over time destroy, right? Discolor, make them crack. When they would get really, really hot in the sun, they would smell funny, right? Clearly, their chemical composition was being changed, and thus also their physical properties, right, of these plastics. So, me as a kid, just looking at the world around me, I saw one thing, and then I heard the scientists telling me that it takes thousands, if not millions, of years for plastic to degrade and decompose, right? Which is weird because, again, I would find plastics in the natural environment decomposing in years, decades, right? And it's not like they just, are broken apart into smaller pieces but remain the same because if a material is off-gassing and its physical properties are changing, clearly also its chemical composition must be altered, right? So, as per usual, scientists were full of shit. They're lying to you, okay? And they're saying the same thing about CO2, how long it takes for it to break down, which is weird because, well, take a sheep or a goat, for example, but maybe a sheep, since, they're shorn for their wool and they grow seemingly tons of it. That sheep will eat trees, right? Plants, greenery that absorbs CO2 from the air and turns that into wool that we use to make stuff out of, right? Or take trees, for example. They capture the CO2 and sequester it, right? Now, I know when a tree rots, right, breaks down, it once again releases some of that CO2 into the atmosphere. Some of it stays in the ground because roots and shit, right? But if we cut down that tree and build something beautiful with it and preserve it to last hundreds of years, well, there it is, all that carbon sequestered, right? So this whole idea that the sun, the most powerful generator ever witnessed by man, right? That it has no effect on the CO2 that's in the atmosphere, right? Look, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a scientist, but to tell me that this powerful generator has no impact on methane, which is flammable, right? Or CO2, it does nothing to break it down, right? I just don't believe it. I think it's bullshit. To tell me that, we need to build, as you see here, all these carbon sequestering factories, right? All over the place, sucking carbon out of the air, right? Instead of, well, just growing trees, right? Growing trees that live thousands of years, right? Why not just grow those? There's plenty of empty space I'm looking at right now where tons and tons and tons of trees could be grown. And then we can use that wood to build things, houses and things of that nature, right? Hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, we figured out how to build immense, beautiful, long-lasting structures with wood, right? Look at the Japanese. They don't even need nails, right? Why can't we still do that? So, this one video, Bill Gates backed carbon capture plant does the work of 40 million trees. I mean, as soon as you see Bill Gates involved in anything, you already know what the deal is, right? Of course. Depopulation, obviously. Obviously. So, from understanding that, it's not that difficult to figure out what else is happening here, knowing just a little bit about Bill Gates, so on and so forth. So in this video, one of the ways in which they capture CO2 is, now get this, by burning trees. Except the CO2 that is emitted when burning the wood is captured and put on the ground, right? So they're growing and then burning trees to sequester carbon. That's just one of the ways they're doing it, right? Why not just grow these trees and use them to build stuff, right? So what's happening here, right? I think it's quite literal and very symbolic of what's happening here. The goal here is to destroy our ability to feed ourselves, right? It's to destroy or greatly impact this planet's ability to grow plants, right? Because that's what plants require, CO2, right? So sucking CO2 out of the air is going to make it more difficult for plant life to thrive, and animals at the same time, right? Because it's all an ecosystem. So while maybe if you could prove, which to my knowledge hasn't been done, if you could prove that all this CO2 that we're producing is somehow negatively impacting the whole planet, right? Look, I'm not saying that pollution in any one localized area, right? If simply by displacing the amount of oxygen in the air, right? Or there being just too much CO2 in any one concentrated area, right? Industrial park or what have you. I'm not saying that that's good for anybody. But as soon as that, just like being next to an exploding volcano and inhaling that, it's not good for anybody, right? But once that CO2 gets dispersed into the atmosphere and the sun hits it, it reacts with other gases or chemicals in the air, right? Or it's absorbed by plants, eaten by animals, put into the ground by, plants and animals. I don't really see that as being much of a problem, right? But even if I grant you that us producing all this CO2 could be an issue in the short term, and we have to sequester some of it, okay, fair enough. But by burning trees, that's how we do this, right? Even if I grant you that, clearly there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. There was a TED Talk by the Prime Minister of Bhutan. Let me see if I can find it. Where the title of the video was, oh, there we go. This country isn't just carbon neutral, it's carbon negative, right? So that's the next step. Once people swallow this carbon neutral nonsense, right? Innovating to zero, shout out to Bill Gates. Then the next step is going to be carbon negative, right? Their goal, in my opinion, is to plunge the Earth, even though it may be headed there naturally, but it's to speed up and plunge us into another ice age, right? Where we can't grow as much food, where we have to go hide underground, right? Where life becomes just more difficult. I mean, look, everything these motherfuckers say, right? The opposite is true, right? They say they care about our health, they want to make us healthier, and with each passing year, humans are sicker and sicker and sicker. There's all these new diseases coming from where? We all know where. Who's ready for the resurgence of HIV? Who's ready for that? Where did that shit come from? Well, watch any of some of the independent, HIV documentaries. You'll see where the HIV came from, right? And there's going to be another wave. Bill Gates said, right? The next pandemic is going to be even worse. Well, how the fuck did he know? Right? Right. Unfortunately, I can't explicitly say it right now as much as I want to, because that'll be my channel, basically. But anyway, give me a couple of months and I'll be back to my usual shit talk. Yeah, so, Bill Gates, who is buying up all the farmland, saying that we need to eat no meat, right? Just fake meat or lab-grown meat, right? He is basically interested in, he and people like him, in grabbing hold, control of the food supply, controlling, if you control the food, you don't need armies, militaries, wealth, money. Once you grab control of the food supply, you don't need anything else to control the people, right? Obviously. And one way he's going to be able to do this, and people like him are going to be able to do this, is by sequestering or stealing all the carbon, right? And once they own a lot of the carbon that's in the atmosphere right now, once they have it stored in all these private facilities, right, they're going to be able to dole it out as they please. Mostly probably just for themselves and their own, cattle, pig, chicken farms, because they'll never want to stop eating that stuff. It's just you who won't be able to, right? So once they own the carbon, the CO2 that's necessary to produce plants and animals, right? You're going to have to go through them to be able to feed yourself in a natural way. At least ways I see it. Thanks for watching.